All right. We are live. We're live on stereo under Flossy Man 76. We are live on YouTube. And we are live on the Talkers of Tick. So, for those of you who don't know, that is TikTok. Maybe it's because I have. Let's make that a little smaller. Cool. All right. Well, let's get started. It is Sunday, another Sunday. We are back here with Cosmic Matters. This is episode 19. And today we're doing Cosmic Matters. I did miss last week. We didn't have a show last week. I had some issues I had to take care of. But we are back. Oh, look at that. The background is messing up. You're going to see some of my room. Oh, well. Yeah, this is where we spend some time just talking about. We talk about philosophy. We talk about space. Mostly here, I'm going to do a little space and a little philosophy today. I guess more philosophy because I'm going to be changing. I guess this will be a kind of an off topic, but I'm going to bring it in. I'm going to reel it in to make sense as to what we normally talk about here. But today I wanted to talk about, does America need new rules? And if you're on TikTok, you see my quote up here by Thomas Jefferson. I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. And I wanted to talk about this subject just because, in the philosophical sense, we talk about the universe. We are all a part of the universe. And the universe is playing a game, right? We are playing the human game. There's different levels. There's different things that are going on. And it's the rules of the game are important. Like games, when we say something is a game, we tend to make that sound like it means it's not important, right? We'll say, oh, they're just playing around, right? But it's not necessarily important, but it can be taken seriously, right? Like we say we play the piano, we play all kinds of different games that are doesn't have to be taken. It can be taken seriously, right? And the way to get good, like in any type of endeavor, in order to really enjoy the endeavor, you have to become skilled at it, right? If you think of, if you want to go sailing, let's say, for example, if you don't know how to sail, if you don't spend the time and the discipline and the work to learn how to sail, then sailing is not going to be very fun, right? If you don't know the words and the terminology, if you don't know the rules of the game of sailing, you're going to crash your ship and you're going to be swimming in the ocean, right? If you go and say, I'm going to play the game of basketball, you have to know the rules of basketball. If you just pick up the ball and start running with it and then, throw it out of bounds or kick it, or something along those lines, you're not going to have very much fun playing basketball because you don't understand the rules, right? Hello, good morning. And you have to understand the rules of the game that you're playing. And the rules are all made up. We make up the rules. When we make up, when we have race rules, sailing, I just use basketball has rules. And when we introduce good morning, yours truly. When we introduce children to the world, right? We teach them. We are teaching them the game that we call humanity. We're saying this is how you are supposed to act. We even tell them their name. This is who you are. And it's like, well, who am I? I used to think about this when I was a kid. I was like, my name is Matthew, but why? Why is it Matthew? Why couldn't it be something else? Why did it have to be? It could have been any other name, and I could have gone through my whole life thinking my name was Brian. I could have gone through my entire life thinking my name was, anything. So I can't even think of a name. I can't even think of another name right now. But the point being is, I've been told these rules. Here's how you act. We even tell kids, that's not you, right? That's their kid. That's not how we act here, right? And we teach this new person to the game. Here are the rules. Here's how you act. Here's how the things are. Now the rules of how we act as humans in the United States of America, and even and I say in the United States of America, as if everyone acts the same here. It depends on where we live. It depends on our socio economical status. It depends on how we were brought up, the rules that we are um, inclined to think are the best rules for me. I remember, my father. I grew up. My mom is white and Jewish. My dad is black, and I remember my father telling me things as like the rules, and he used to say things like, you see your mother over there? Me and her are the only two people who are ever going to actually care about you. Undoubtedly, right? And so I was like, okay, I guess, I don't know. And he used to always say to me, you need to, because of the color of your skin, you need to be twice as good as everyone else, because I was a minority in a mostly white school. And I was just like, and by the way, I was like, what are you talking about? Like, I had friends. Most of my friends were white. I had a couple of black friends. I had, I mixed with everyone. The Calazos, my Spanish friends, I love, but I didn't see it. But I understand that the world that he grew up in, that was his reality. That was, he grew up in the 50s and the 60s, and so these were rules that he was instilling upon me. And so the concept of everybody, like, we need to, as humans, if we want to have a fair game, right? Because we're just, like I said, we're just playing a game. Like in the reality of the universe, none of this matters. It doesn't matter. It's a matter of watching a play. It's like watching the basketball. It's like watching the football games I'm going to watch today. You're watching a game, the universe on the outside, watching the game, watching people who are intensely believing that the game is the most important thing in the world, right? It's the most important thing to them. And this is what the universe does. If you want to believe that and again, this is my beliefs, my world belief, but if you want to believe that the universe is a consciousness and is going to be around forever and just wants to enjoy doing something, if you're going to be around for infinity, trillions and trillions and trillions of years, never ending, then you want to experience everything, right? And one of the ways you're going to entertain yourself is by forgetting who you are, forgetting that you have the power, that you are the universe itself, and making little small microcosms of yourself, and then letting those things play, letting it play out, knowing and forgetting that it's just a game, right? And getting so invested in the game that you're playing. Right now, we're playing the human game, the game of, hey, what's up, Christelle? I see you there. Getting invested in the human game of, I got to do that. Like, if you really sit down and think about everything that you're trying to do, is any of it going to matter? And in a world where if you just step out of the game, right, just like I'm going to watch the football game, and then as soon as the football game's over, as soon as football game's over for me, it's not gonna matter. As soon as the football game is over for them, yeah, maybe it'll matter a little bit. They're like, we're gonna go to the next round, or we lost, or the people who lost are gonna go home and they're gonna be time with their kids and blah blah blah. And eventually they're all going to retire and watch the game, or maybe not be a part of the game anymore, right? So it's just a microcosm of what's actually happening in life, right? And so think of all the human beings that have lived and have thought everything was important and their life was important. And as I say this, I don't want to belittle. I'm trying to walk this line. I don't want to say that your life isn't important, right? It's like, it's important to you, right? Your life is important to you. It's something that the universe wants to do, but everything in the universe has its own importance. But the importance is only upon you. There's people who don't even know there's a football game today. And as important as it is to the people who love football, the people who don't love football, to the rest of the universe, is just a bunch. This is these little organic things running around in a little small section of a little tiny planet, and that's it. Like it's very insignificant, but it's very significant, and it's huge to the people who are playing, who dedicate their life to it, who practice every day, who are playing injured and hurt and giving everything they possibly can to this game, right? Which is what makes a good play, which makes a good game, which makes, by getting involved. I remember watching an Alan Watts bit video, and he was talking about, you can make anything, you can demean anything, you can make anything seem silly. You can watch the person who's the best violinist on the planet Earth and spends their entire life practicing, and you'd be like, what are you doing? You're just scratching some strings together to make some eerie sound, vibrations of in the air. Like, what's the point of doing that, right? Like, whatever it is, you can always poo-poo it. Right? And we see as kids, or as parents, you see your kids doing things like playing a video game, and you're like, it's just a game, and they're so involved and they get so emotional about it, and you're like, it's just a game. Well, you're just playing a game. We're all just playing a game. And right now we're playing a game in America where we have rules, right? We have a constitution, right? And what I want to talk about a little bit today is it time for the Constitution to change? If you're on TikTok, you could see what I already have it posted above my head. And one of the things I constantly, as we go through and we try to create the proper rules for us to exist as human beings living in a society that we call the United States of America, you need rules that we all abide by. And it started off as the Constitution, but the problem is that the rules are too old. Like, they don't work anymore. And they shouldn't work anymore. Like, we shouldn't be looking at rules from 270, 280, 200. I don't even know how old it is now. I'm a bicentennial baby, so I was 200 years. So I guess it's like 250. Whew. So we shouldn't be looking at people who lived 250 years ago and say, well, here's the rules of how we should be acting today, because they didn't even know. They didn't understand. And when people are like, well, the founding fathers, well, great. They made great rules to get America out of the 1776s, and one of the things that that I was told, the great thing about our Constitution is that it's a living document. It could be changed, it could be amended, it can be, I was watching I want to say it's a comedian. I think his name is Jim Jeffries, right? And he was doing a whole thing on like gun control, and he said, he was talking about how Americans, because he's Australian, he's like, people will say, you can't change the Second Amendment, and he's like, I think you don't understand the definition of amendment. Like, an amendment is, the definition is a change. Like, I don't think you need a constitution, you need a dictionary. So the whole point is that it's supposed to change. The point is, we are supposed to update the rules. We're supposed to say, here's how society has changed, technology has changed, how we look at gender roles has changed, like how we look at each other has changed, and these rules are no longer applicable. The game has changed. And if you think of any game, if you think of football, so I'm about football, right? And back in the day, they didn't have face masks. You could grab people and throw them on the ground. There's this and that, and there was all kinds of stuff that you could do that now in today's world is barbaric. They would say, you could literally, run and hit someone as hard as you can in the helmet, in the face, and then punch them and scratch and bite and all this stuff. And so as time has gone on, we've changed the rules and said, okay, this is the way the game is going to be played because we want to get it better, right? And I'm just using football because it's a Sunday. But that's happened with basketball. It happens with all kinds of things. It happens with gymnastics. It happens with the Olympics, the way they time things. The stop clocks got better, and then things get better, and they change the rules. And now you can have a starting block. And they do this with all types of games. All things change because technology changes, life changes, the world is different. And so to look at a document from 250 years ago and say, well, that's how we need to abide by this document today, it just doesn't apply. It really doesn't. So when I hear people talking about, and gun controls is the easiest one to point out, but there's all of them, right? Like even the First Amendment, like most people will agree, like freedom of speech. I hear people talk about freedom of speech when they're talking about things like, yeah, I'm still talking. What do you mean? Why are you asking me if I'm still talking, Stereo? I hear people talk about freedom of speech when they're talking about like a company. They're like, well, I have freedom of speech and the company can't fire me. I can say what I want. It's like, you don't understand what freedom of speech is, do you? Freedom of speech for the government, for the Constitution, basically means that you are allowed to say what you want. And then they had to even amend that because you can't say things like, you can't yell out there's a fire in a crowded place, and you can't do things that are going to jeopardize or jeopardize people's safety, right? So they even had to change that. But the freedom of speech was basically written to say you can disagree with the government. You can, and without penalty, you can speak your mind and say, it was because there used to be kings, right? And they would say, you can't speak against the king. So they were revolting against that. And they said, yeah, sure, you're allowed to stand up and you can't be put in jail for your political beliefs. And that was great at that time. But now, in this time, we have things like the internet. They weren't thinking about, well, what about social media, right? What happens when that comes out in the year 2000, 300 years from now? Like that wasn't a part of what their thought process was. And so because I've gone back and forth on social media, like because freedom of speech, right? And I've heard people say, well, freedom of speech doesn't equal freedom of reach. And so you have the right to say something and you don't go to jail, but does a social media platform have the right to shadow ban you so no one will see what you say? Do they have the right to just ban you, period, and kick you off the platform? Do they have the right to flag your information as false or true or whatever? Like the point being is, I'm not trying to say what the rules should be. What I'm trying to say is that this is a conversation that needs to be had, and we can't look at the First Amendment because it wasn't written for this situation. We as a society today have to come up with, and we shouldn't just leave it up to the judges, right? Because again, those are rules that are put, like the judges are put in place by the old rules. Right? Same thing with, that's just the First Amendment. The Second Amendment, same problem. When people they're talking about like the Second Amendment, and people like, these are my rights. I have a right to bear arms based on the Constitution, the Second Amendment. They weren't talking about the guns that we have today. They were talking about muskets with like you shoot it. If the accuracy of it was, they didn't even have bullets at that time. They didn't even have bullets. They had like a little round ball. And so you literally would miss what you were shooting at, like 60% of the time, because before they even came up with the science to make bullets so that you could be accurate with a shot, right? And so you would shoot the musket, and then you'd have to put some gunpowder in there and tap it down with the thing and put another musket ball in there and then get ready to aim it and then shoot it. That was what the Second Amendment was written about, right? Not I have a clip of 50 bullets and I can shoot them all at the same time, like, and drone strikes and tanks and flamethrowers. Like, that was not what the Second Amendment was written about. So we have to take that in context and say, okay, well, maybe we should rewrite that. We should have a conversation about the rules of today's society, right? And so I'm going to pull up and bring up, if you're on TikTok, you already see it, but you're not seeing it on YouTube. So I wanted, for the people who are like, oh, we have to listen to the founding fathers. Well, I brought up this clip from this quote from one of the founding fathers, and this quote is basically, it's Thomas Jefferson famously believed that the earth belongs always to the living generation, asserting that constitutions and laws should expire. Asserting, excuse me, let me read that correctly. He was asserting that constitutions and laws should expire and be rewritten by each new generation around every 19 to 20 years to remain relevant, famously stating every constitution then and every law naturally expires at the end of 19 years. If it be enforced longer than that, it is an act of force and not of right. He felt societies shouldn't be bound by the dead hand of the past, comparing it to forcing a man to wear clothes that fit him as a boy. Okay, so I'll leave this up a little bit. Yeah, my reading skills are, I'm going to leave it up there, and then I got rid of it. So again, just looking at that, like, so when you talk about, the founding fathers, well, here's one of the founding fathers. Here's one of the people who were part of writing the Constitution. And I'm going to read this again. I'm going to read that again because I got another person on star here, and it's just important to understand. And it should be something that we should all discuss, and as far as saying it should be done, like, this is what is causing all the problems today. Like, we have this problem with what's going on with the woman who was just shot in Minnesota. And it's like, well, some people are looking at it and saying this, and some people look at it and say another way. And it's like, these laws, it's because we're looking at the laws and the rules from 250 years ago, and trying to apply them to situations that occur today, and they just don't work. It doesn't make sense, right? So I want to again say, Thomas Jefferson famously believed in that the earth belongs to the living generation, the people now. I guess I'm alive. I'm part of the living generation, right? Asserting that constitutions and laws should expire and be rewritten by every new generation around 19 to 20 years. Every 19 to 20 years. And if we want our society to survive, then we have to change the rules. We have to adapt. Thomas Jefferson understood this. He's like, the things that we're doing and talking about today are not going to be the issues that are going to happen in 20 years. And look at how much things change. And now we are going into a world of AI and robotics. How are we not? We need to have rules in place. We need to think about this and not say, what are we going to use the Constitution to figure out if AI is going to be considered a sentient being, and should a robot have rights? Are we going to be able to just beat the robots up? Are they going to like we need to start thinking about this before, and that's not anything that someone like my mother's almost in her 80s has to worry about, right? But it is something that the next generation has to worry about. And so there should be written rules. We should sit down and say, hey, we're going to be playing this game now with AI and robots, and that can change. Like, we look at video evidence and we look at these kind of things and say, well, maybe we need to change this, right? Maybe we need to come up with new rules for how we act and for the game that we're playing, because the old rules are not applicable anymore. And by trying to enforce the old rules, we are hurting ourselves. They aren't just. They don't make sense. They don't make sense for where we are now. So, how do we do that, you might ask? It's a challenge. It's a challenge because people in general don't want to be proactive. They want to be reactive, right? They want to be angry. They want to pick their teams. They want to pick their sides. And it's just like this thing that happened in Minnesota with this woman. It's like there's two different types of people who look at the same video, and because they've already decided beforehand what they wanted to see, they justify it. They justify the same exact footage and look at it and justify the it doesn't change their mind at all. It wouldn't have changed their mind no matter what. Didn't matter. The video wouldn't have changed their mind no matter what. And I was like, we need the video. We need the video. Why? What changed? How many videos do you need? The people who are on one side are going to keep believing what they believe, and the people on the other side are going to keep believing what they believe. And this is why, and when they look at the precedent of law and the rules that we have, it's so confounded. I think I was watching this thing about like Elon Musk, and he was talking about Tesla, and that he wanted to get rid of the mirrors, the side mirrors on the car, right? And he's like, it is so hard to get rid of this. He's like, because the mirrors, the law was put in place, the rule for the mirrors was put in place for the side mirrors in the car. It's like all cars have to have side mirrors. He's like, yeah, but I have a better technology. I have a way to make a camera. We can make the car more aerodynamic because I can put the little monitor inside the car as opposed to on the outside of the car. And so we can get better mileage there. And there won't be a blind spot because the camera can see that area that is a blind spot for people. And you can just see, and it's a much better solution. But because of the rules that all cars have to have side mirrors that was put on the, when car, in the early 1900s, and you can't, and nobody ever changes a rule, and it's so hard to change anything that now we have a inferior technology. He couldn't do it, right? So I got to put side mirrors, but like the Cybertruck, for example, has side mirrors that like you can literally detach because it has to be made with side mirrors, but you don't need them, right? And so that this is how societies end. This is how games end, right? Because they become inflexible. They become stuck, right? And that's not the way the universe works. The universe doesn't like stuck. The universe, you have to be fluid. You have to be willing to change. You have to be willing to adapt. This is how the universe works. And unfortunately, people don't like adapting. People don't like change because it's hard. It's tough. An old mentor said people always want change, but they don't want transition, right? Because transitions are hard. People want to lose 20 pounds. They don't want to go through the transition of losing the 20 pounds, right? People want to, they want their life to be better as far as money wise in situations, but they don't want to go through the transition of what it takes to build a business or learn a new skill or whatever it's going to take, right? And so we all want change, but we don't want transition. And unfortunately, though, if you don't change and you don't go through the transition, then things break. And unfortunately, we happen to be in a country that seems to be getting closer and closer and closer to that breaking point, and it's because we don't do this. We don't change the rules. We took a document that was supposed to be a living document that was supposed to be amended, and we don't even talk about amendment. So we don't even, it's like there's no way we would ever amend this. And people feel lost and they feel that they can't invoke change. That's why they go out and protest. Protests, I don't know. I don't see any point in protesting anymore. Has anyone seen any changes, whether you were on the right protesting at the Capitol building or you were on the left and you're protesting about ICE, or you're protesting about Black Lives Matter, or you're protesting about Wall Street, or you're protesting about what I don't, maybe I'm wrong. Please tell me if I'm wrong. Maybe I haven't seen the results of the protests, but it just seems protests are just okay. No kings. Okay. What happened? I mean, everybody got to go outside for a little while and make cool signs. So the people I do see who make change, which is actually one of the things that I'm doing, is starting my community called Bright Futures, which I have been working on. Is the way I see change now is that you have to now this is the change that I see people be able to make will change as time goes on. Like I always feel like the best way to make change is you have to there's something called the golden rule, right? And most people think of the golden rule as do unto others as you want done unto yourself. That's the typical golden rule. But the golden rule of America is those who have the gold make the rules, right? And if you want the rules to change, then you need to have gold, right? You need to have power, which in our country is money, right? Like the politicians, I had a friend who wanted to run for like it wasn't even anything big. It was like a local something, local representative, councilman, something like that, right? And literally he asked me to help him out. And the first meeting was all about how do we get money? How do we raise money? How do we find the whales? How do we not waste time on the small things, but how can we get a big chunk of money? Because the money is what wins, right? And it's like the politicians, they do what they can do to get your votes, but the money comes from the banks and the money comes from the system. The money is, I always said in America, when we made this America, because we were coming from England and because we were trying to separate from the church. Hey, good morning, Worm. Because we were trying to separate from the church and we separated from the feudal system and the kings and all that kind of stuff, that was like the main thing that was on our mind, which is why they separated church and state. But from what I see, the next change has to be the next America, now hopefully this America figures it out, but we need to separate money and state. We need to say we can't have the money and the government. If you want to have companies, by the way, I'm for capitalism. I like capitalism in certain arenas. Competition drives prices down, creates advances, and it's good in most cases. But when you and I don't believe in monopolies, but unfortunately this is what we have in our country. We have very small amount of media, we have very small amount of companies that control the food, we have very small amount of companies that control the energy, and a very small amount of companies that control the entire stock market. We got like Vanguard and BlackRock that own like almost everything. And so the point being is that the government is supposed to be the referee, right? Like there's supposed to be competition, and then the government is supposed to be separate and like a referee. And yes, the referees might make mistakes, just like in any other game. Just like in any game, the referees can make errors, but we need to stop. We can't have the teams just saying like, well, whoever bribes the referee the most money wins. And that seems to be what's going on in our game right now. The judges are bribed and bought. The Congress, the Senate, the president. That's all about the money. I posted a post on my Facebook, and it said it took me I search on Grok, but it took me 2 Grok searches to figure out why we invaded Venezuela. and actually, let me quote myself correctly. Let me look real quick. One search was how much money did the oil companies donate to the presidential election? And that was a bunch. And then I wrote, where in the Western Hemisphere, where are the biggest oil reserves? guess where number 1 was? Venezuela. Guess where number 2 was? Canada. The places that are present. And by the way, this is not a right or left thing. This is not Trump bashing, because I would have done the same thing when Biden was in office, because I said, like, why is Venezuela such a priority to Trump? It took me 2 searches to get my answers. First one, which country has the largest reservoir of oil in the Western Hemisphere. Second question was, I don't pop up. What key donations of companies to Donald Trump's campaign? Chevron, Exxon Oil, Occidental Petroleum, and ConocoPhillips. Is giving hundreds of thousands of $2 million in one super PAC. ExxonMobil Mobiles gave on over $1 million. Blah blah blah. Right now, again, I don't want to. This is not like let's bash Trump, because I could do the same thing for Biden and say where were his contributions, and they came from the United Auto Workers, which is why Tesla was left out of the EV summit. Like they were all about EVs and electric, and they gave all this money to build these plants and $7,500 tax credits, and all this money was given to Ford and GM. All right, so it's both sides, and it's funny when I watch people. I have friends on both sides, and like I have some friends on my Instagram that all day long, it's just posts. They'll post like every day, maybe 8 to 10 posts of videos of their echo chamber of like why the liberals are horrible, and then I'll get through all those posts, and then I'll have my liberal friend. It's like, and there are 10 posts on why the Republicans are awful and racists and this and that, right? and I don't. People don't seem to get it, right? Like it's like divide and conquer. Like we can't move ahead as a society if we can't even converse with each other. If we can if people can look at a video, the same exact video, and both be convinced that video says their side is right, right? Because they thought their side was right before they even watched the video, and whatever they saw in the video, they were going to. Yeah, I just said to some of my friends on the right, they were like talking about, like, I just made a video about this on TikTok, and they were like, well, you should listen to the law enforcement, and it's their fault because they're protesting, and this woman was putting the officers in danger, and these are criminals, and this is how they should be treated. And I was like, well, okay, if I took this situation and then just switched it around to January 6th, isn't everything you're saying applied to the right? And then didn't Donald Trump go and say all those people are not criminals and free them? Did you have problems with that? It's like we can't have, and again, I'm not picking on Trump or the right. I'm just pointing, because they're in power right now, right? When it was Biden, I was making fun of them and their hypocrisy. Like, we need to stop being hypocrites. We need to say we want Team Human, Team America, fine, whatever. We understand that we all have we all grew up differently. We all have different ways. Everybody wants the same thing. We all want for our families to be successful, to live, to prosper. We want the future to prosper. All we do is we just have different. The only difference is we just have different perspectives. I was talking about, if someone, we have to be empathetic to someone else's situation. I had a girlfriend. Well, she wasn't a girl. She was a friend who was a girl, and she was a bartender. And she was telling me about how she has her keys ready, and when every time she would leave, she has to be worried about getting to her car, and she has to look around and make sure. And I'm like, I don't do any of that, right? And it's because I'm a 6'3" man, 300-pound man, and I don't have to worry about dark walking from the door of the bar to my car as much as she does. And it doesn't even occur to me that is a situation that she has to deal with. And so we have to be empathetic to other people's realities of life, even if it doesn't affect us, right? And so, and on both sides, like, I understand, being, I guess, black and white, right? that people who are black, who look at the way our system is, in America, and they can see the systematic racism, and they see that the systems are put in place to keep them impoverished, right? They talk. I understand all the arguments. It's like, it's like, wait, the people on the right say, oh, well, look at Chicago. There's all these guns. It's like, well, all these black people with all these guns, and they do the most killing. Like, well, the guns where the black people didn't make the guns. They don't own the guns. All the crack and the drugs and the cocaine, it wasn't made in New York City and Chicago and Los Angeles. So how to get there, right? But on the same note, I can understand someone who is white in America and is like, why do I gotta get vilified being like a white male or this? Like, I didn't do anything. I'm not racist. I don't feel like I'm racist. I'm not benefiting from slavery today. I'm just trying to live my life, and I don't understand why they feel that way, because they are not you and you are not them, and you have different perspectives. And so you have to be able to look at someone else's point of view, even if you don't understand it. You have to say, why does that person feel that way? Why are they thinking that way? And then you can start having a discussion, as opposed to what we do is we say, well, that person's evil. We label them. That person's racist. That person's a thug. That person's a criminal. That person's a... By the way, we leave out the person part. We get rid of... The easiest way to create war or to make yourself feel justified in your cause is to dehumanize the other party, right? Because if it's not a human, if it's not something like you, then we feel okay in destroying it. We feel okay in attacking it. We feel okay and justified, because that's not a human. That's a liberal. That's a criminal. That's somebody who is obstructing justice. They're an illegal immigrant, not a human. They're illegal alien. They're an illegal alien. You know what an alien is? Not human. Right? And so now we're justifying everything. They shouldn't have any rights. Why should we treat them like anything? And so when you can dehumanize somebody, you can then therefore justify your treatment of them in any way, shape, or form that you feel like. And this is what we do. And again, this is not like a right or a left thing. This is just what is done, right? The left does the same thing. Oh, this person's a racist. Oh, they don't agree, and everything. Oh, they're racist. Oh, they don't think there should be reparations. They're racist. They don't believe that, this and that. They're racist. So the Ku Klux Klan member who's literally stringing people up and hanging them is racist, and the person who just doesn't, who said the N-word while reciting a song, who's a 16-year-old girl who's singing a song and says the N-word because she's reciting the song, is also racist. Right? So you put those two people in the same bucket, the same word, because it just dehumanizes them. And again, once you dehumanize somebody, hello, whoever keeps typing hi in my comments, if you can dehumanize someone, you can therefore justify treating them as less. And therefore we can't agree. We can't come to... I always said the best way for us to come together as people on planet Earth, as humans, is we need an alien invasion. We actually need real aliens. Like, we need the aliens. I hope the aliens come. Now, the sad part is, if the aliens come, we're all dead, right? Because the aliens will have technology that will easily overwhelm anything that we have, as far as that goes. I know we're the heroes in our own mind, but the aliens will win. We'll lose to the aliens. We'll lose to the robots. We're going to lose to the AI. We're going to lose to all these things, right? Hopefully the AI and the robots see us as good pets. That's what I'm shooting for, that they see us as, that they love us and they take care of us just like we do our pets. Right? And they don't see us as a threat, because just like our pets, if our pets started biting our kids or biting other people, we would put the pet down, right? And the pet doesn't have a chance. So that's kind of how I feel humans are going to be. But I'm off track as usual on tangents, but let me get back to my original point here. Is that we need to come up with better rules. We need to come up with rules for the internet. We need to come up with rules for how actual Congress works. If you actually look, I remember sitting down. They don't even teach this stuff anymore. They don't teach civics. I remember as like a 46, 47-year-old, it was finally the time where I actually learned how the Electoral College worked. Like I was like, I didn't really even understand it. I was like, I don't get it. And if most people understood it, they'd be like, what the hell is this? This is the stupidest system ever. I hate the Electoral College. It doesn't make sense. And if you looked into it, you would understand what I'm talking about. It's like, for those who don't know, like when the Electoral College happens, everyone votes, right? And then each state has its number of electors. So you see with the numbers based upon the population of the state. And then the electors, and then how come the election is in November? It's counted and called in like November, December, but then the inauguration doesn't happen until like January, right? Because then all the electors have to go and they have to put in the votes. Now the electors, by the way, they don't have to vote the way the people voted. And this system was put in place because at the time, 250 years ago, when they wrote the freaking Constitution, at the time, they were like, we need electors because the people are kind of stupid, right? And the people are not educated enough to sometimes they might make the wrong choice. So we need to have these electors go. So like the electors can go and just go against the popular vote. It's happened. It's happened as recently as 2016 when I think there was two states that Hillary Clinton won, and the electors just decided not to go with what the popular vote was in their own states. Now, it didn't change the course of the election, but it can. Now you might go, well, that's kind of elitist and racist, right? Or I don't know, is it racist? No, I don't know. Whatever ist you want to come up with. But it was written for the 1770s when it was true. There wasn't internet. There wasn't even newspapers. The people didn't know what was going on. How would you find out what was happening you'd only know about your local elections? How would somebody in the 1700s, in the early 1800s, someone who lived in Maine know about what's happening in Virginia? Like, how would they know? It would be like horseback, a letter, a handwritten letter with a feather that's going to explain to the news. There wasn't even a freaking printing press. Oh, I guess there was a printing press, but you get my point, right? It was not the way newspapers work today, or internet, or anything. So the general public didn't understand what was going on. So they might have needed electors to make sure that these people, and they couldn't even read. Most of them didn't even go to school. So yeah, it doesn't make sense in today's society, but it did make sense then. And that's why it doesn't need to exist today. This is why we need to go back over the rules and say, in 2025, these things don't apply to us anymore. And again, I'm going to read the Thomas Jefferson quote because it's so important. This was the founding father, right? One of the founding fathers, Thomas Jefferson, famously believed that the earth belongs always to the living generation, asserting that constitutions and laws should expire and be rewritten by each new generation around every 19 to 20 years to remain relevant, famously stating, quote, every constitution then and every law naturally expires at the end of 19 years. If it is to be enforced longer than that, it is an act of force and not of right, end quote. He felt society shouldn't be bound by the dead hand of the past, comparing it to forcing a man to wear clothes that fit his body as a boy, right? So there's a quote from the founding fathers. Everyone wants to bring up the founding fathers, but they only want to bring up the founding fathers when it perpetrates the values that they have, right? The things that they want. Then the founding fathers and the Constitution is super important, right? When they want to keep their guns, or they want to keep their freedom of speech, or whatever it is that they're talking about, then they want to bring it up. But they don't want to talk about the Constitution and what the founding fathers said when it doesn't agree with the point that they want to get across. And we need to get rid of that. We need to eliminate our egos. We need to be able to say, I'm wrong. We need to look at other people and have empathy. It doesn't have to be sympathy. And by the way, empathy doesn't mean you have to agree with a person. It means you have to understand it and take the time to put yourself in their shoes and understand where they are coming from, right? Like, I have a lot of empathy for women. I don't agree with them all. I don't agree with everything that feminism says. I don't agree with everything liberalism says. I don't agree with everything that the right says, or MAGA says, or anybody says. I don't agree with anything that ultimately anything. I'm on team human. I'm not on team left, right, man, woman. I'm on the team that makes humans better, that advances us as a species. That's all I want. That's what we should all want. And to come to a conclusion that's going to move us forward, you don't have to agree all the time, but we do need to have rules in place that we go over, that we look over every generation. 20 years sounds good to me. That we spend the time to say, is this relevant anymore? Do we need mirrors on? Are we gonna be making cars that drive themselves? Like, how silly will this be? We're gonna have cars that drive themselves with side mirrors on them. Why? It reminds me of that old there was an antidote, a story antidote. Acid. How do you even say that? Anyway, whatever. Of the mother who's making bread, and she's teaching her daughter how to make bread, and she cuts off the end of the bread and throws it away. And the daughter says, why did you do that? Why did you cut that part off? And the mother's like, well, that's because that's how you do it. That's what my mother taught me. And she goes, okay, well, let me talk to grandma. She goes to grandma. She says, Grandma, I was watching the bread being made, and you see that we cut almost a quarter of the bread off and threw it away. Why did we do that? And she's like, because that's how it's done. That's the rule. That's how we've always done it. That's what my mother taught me. So she goes to great grandma, and she goes, great grandma, why? I just learned how to make the bread that you made. Why did you always cut off the quarter of the bread? And she's like, well, because when I was growing up, I had an oven that was too small to fit the whole pan of bread in. So I had to cut off a quarter of bread. Yeah. So the point being is we need to evaluate, why are we doing the things that we're doing? Because we don't need to do that. We have a bigger oven now. So we're just cutting off the bread for no reason and throwing it away because it's just the way it's been done. That's the way it is. And the way it is not always correct. And so the Constitution, as much as I love it, and as much as I love America, and as much as I love people more than I love those things. And so we have to be able to sit down, have conversations, take all the rules, take all the guidelines, take all the taxes, is this working? Is this system working for us? Now, the problem is the system works for the people who are in power. And I was saying before, like, the reason I'm starting my new community, by the way, you can check it out, Bright Futures. It's going to be in a school community, SKOOL. I'll start promoting it and putting links in the future. I'm like, I got 33 videos to make the community. I'm at 5, but as I said, one of the rules for the game that we're playing right now is the golden rule. And the golden rule used to be treat others as you want them to treat you. But the golden rule of today's society is those that have the gold make the rules. And so if we want to make change, it's not about protesting. It's not about rioting. It's not about uprising and shooting and violence. The way to change the rules is make a bunch of money. Make enough money for yourself, learn the rules of the game, make enough money for yourself that you don't need a job, you don't need the healthcare, you don't need their system to survive, And then after you do that, now you can start invoking change, and we can start. And then the challenge after at that point is that once you get to that level where you can get out of the system, you don't need the system anymore. Well, the problem is then you have a lot of power, and power corrupts. And so it's like, well, why should I go back and change it? So the thing is, we have to make a community where we can get out of the system, we can get out of the rat race, and then we can turn around and try to help others do the same. So on that note, it's 11:08. It's 11 o'clock. And, didn't have as many people sit in today. Again, people don't like transition. They like change, and they like diversity, and they like anger and hatred. And the topics I talk about are about coming together, and not as exciting, but hopefully that's what we can do. All right. That is Cosmic Matters for this week. I will be back. I know it's a little off topic. Next week we'll be back to science and space. I just wanted to get some of this off my mind for today's show. So I will see you all next week. And until then, remember, we all matter, and you matter to me.